And welcome, everyone. Welcome to the session about using data and analytics to create a meaningful employee experience. So today we have a series of panelists with us. Kirsty Keck from Nationwide Building Society, Richard Mason from Lloyds Banking Group, Phil Scholey with BlueJeans, Sanchit with Infosys, and Pete Tapley from DXC Technologies. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us live. You can tell us live real quick. We had a very bad storm here last night. Knocked my PC right out of the water, and it is no longer functional. So unlike normal, where I have this nice screen behind me, I do have a mobile phone, and I'm coming to you live, mobile. So there is sunshine here eventually in North Carolina. So to start the session, I'd like everybody just to take a couple of minutes, give a real quick background, and Phil, Paul, I'll start with you. A very quick background about what your role is and what your position is as far as workplace goes.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So thank you for that. So yeah, absolutely, Paul Scholey. Essentially, I run BlueJeans internationally. So BlueJeans, as you see clearly, I mean, the panelists are using BlueJeans right now. It's a video conferencing environment. It's a meetings platform. And it's very much geared towards the modern way of working, the modern workforce, modern organizations with disparate workforce who travel a lot, often in areas of poor connectivity and things. So that's what I do now. But before that, I've spent 20 years working in data, in analytics, and in business intelligence. So right the way from business objects, Oracle, Teradata, and the like. So I've worked a long time in data, as well as now in the, if you like, in the modern workplace environment.
And real quick, Richard.
Hi, yes, I work within Lloyds Banking Group within our transformation and tech division, and supporting the future skills of the organisation. So that's everything from work experience, interns, apprentices, graduates, as well as some of the other kind of normal hires that we bring into the organisation. So there's about 250 to 300 of that we support at any one time through the programme and through to roll off at the end of it.
Okay. Kirsty.
Hi, yeah, Kirsty Keck. I currently head up the leadership and learning practice within the people and culture community in Nationwide. Prior to that, I was leading the tech talent squad, which was our people proposition, which underpins our tech strategy investment that we were making. I've had a great opportunity as well Nationwide just to work across finance and also within risk as well. So my kind of business knowledge and experience across Nationwide is relatively broad.
Sure. Pete.
Yeah, hi, this is Pete Tapley. I'm with DXC Technology, and among other things, DXC is a leading provider of managed services for the workplace. So I talk to customers and prospects around the world, mostly in enterprise customers, so big scale implementations where we're figuring out the devices and collaboration and support they need to attract and retain and have their talent thrive.
Excellent. And last but not least, Sanchit.
Good morning, everybody. I'm with Infosys, based out of Princeton, New Jersey. I run our digital workplace services business, where we basically partner with our clients seeking to modernize their technology environments, driving in some sense consumerization of technology for the employees, and giving them a much better environment to drive digital collaboration. I mean, never more important than in the current times right now.
Yes. And so as we go forward, we have a very limited time period, so we have about 27 minutes left. And I'll start with you, Sanchit. You had mentioned previously, we had a conversation the other day about how you guys are using data within the environment, and we'll do the round robin as well, everyone. But if you can just take a few moments and explain to me what you were talking about on Thursday, I believe it was, about how you're using data with some of your workplace information.
Sure. Yeah, so, over the last few years, of course, people analytics has emerged as an important cog in driving an enhanced employee experience across the entire life cycle. But especially given the current times, with people working remote, there being very little physical contact per se, we found a unique use of data and analytics to sort of provide recommendations to our employees on digital collaboration. What you want to avoid is, collaboration overload in a way. We've got a scenario where for most people, the difference between the workspace and the home is one door. We were spending 80% of our time on collaboration earlier, and now I think all of us are experiencing an excessive amount of video and voice calls. So we certainly leveraging data that we get from these cloud-based collaboration tools to recommend to our employees on, probably shorter meeting times, sort of managing that workload from a collaboration standpoint, also giving recommendations on, having some free time for deep focused work. And last but not least, also ensuring that particularly for our employees, the after hours requests are optimized and they don't go overboard, because that is where a lot of the stress is coming in today, with a lot of the distributed working. So the idea is basically to leverage some of this data that you can get from these cloud-based collaboration tools to drive employee wellness, which is, given the current times, a top priority for most organizations.
Yep. Thank you. And Paul, I know you were looking at some things within BlueJeans as far as being able to gauge the employee experience around some of the data that you guys do within the platform. Can you sort of expand upon that, and then we'll reach out to Richard and Kirsty on their inputs on what they're seeing in their environments as well.
Yeah, I mean, this whole point of engagement, I think, is, and Sanchit, you made the point there about employee wellness, because, even if you go back to pre-COVID times, we see a lot of customers clearly trying to engage the modern workplace, and the modern workplace, most of us, and I'm guessing it's the same for some of my fellow panelists, Kirsty and Richard or whatever, part of the thing we're dealing with is kind of a skill shortage. And we see lots of organizations figuring out that, if there is a skill shortage, we can't necessarily make it worse by making people come into the office every single day. If I've got to try and, if there's a small talent pool and now I can only fish in that sea of people that, live within an hour from the office, then we have to find ways of taking the work to the talent. We call it taking the work to the talent, and that brings with it various problems. Because we still see that, we in Britain, for example, I mean, we work the longest hours in the European Union. That's a fact. We just do. So we work the longest hours in the European Union, yet even pre-COVID, if you look at employee productivity, it's steadily declining, right? I mean, that is a fact. Employee productivity is steadily declining. So we're working longer hours. Employee productivity globally across the whole of the country is declining. And I think you mentioned wellness there. To me, it's about loneliness. If you talk, and I'm sure it's worse now in COVID. The question I have is what it's going to be like in the new norm. But 60% of people, I mean, it's a fact, 60% of people feel lonely at work. That was even pre-COVID times. 60% of people feel lonely. So, I think the point is, how do we enable people to work remotely? How do we engage whatever the new norm is? How do we deal with the new working practices, yet keep people engaged? And how do we use data to do that and help people over the fact that they feel disconnected and they tend to feel lonely? I mean, one of the things at BlueJeans, I mean, we do analyze this all of the time. I mean, we can look at engagement, we can look at, who's using which tools, how many people are they engaging with, how much video density we call it. So are people, engaging over video, or are people just using traditional audio dial-on technology? We can measure every element of our service and ensure privacy and security at the same time. But to me, it's a bigger issue. It's about culture. It's about engagement. It's about providing support for people kind of in the new norm.
I just love the fact, that we before we got to productivity, we talked about wellness and engagement. How things have changed. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Richard, I see you shaking your head yes, around
Yeah,
the wellness, and you know, I'll give you a little bit of lead in for this. So one of the projects that I'm working, we have a daily stand-up call, and the first minute or two of your piping in and telling everybody what's going on is what's going on with you, not
Yes.
what's going on with work. None of those things. Is what's going on with you as a person. And it's kind of interesting. I hear you're taking that as well.
yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I completely agree with what Paul was saying before as well. Is historically we've really been measuring the success of people whilst they're on the program. We've been in quite a good position to track it both from a work perspective, but also the qualifications they're doing mean you've got two standpoints. And now we've almost got a third prong on that, which is the wellness factor that Paul mentioned before. And where we're increasingly using data around it is how can we measure the wellness of the colleagues we've got? Because particularly if you look at our apprentice type programs, a lot of them fall into the younger brackets. They're people that might have come straight from school or straight from university life, so are more likely to be in the living by themselves or living with quote unquote strangers through flat shares or whatever that might look like. And increasingly we're measuring how engaged colleagues are with different things. So by providing both face-to-face interaction, albeit virtual, and having that stand up as you mentioned, Dee, but slightly less frequently due to the cohort sizes that we're looking at, but then also having the interaction with the immediate team on a daily basis so that they can support the colleagues on the wider program is becoming increasingly important for us. So rather than just tracking the productivity and the qualification success, we've also started tracking how many people are dialing into those calls, how many are listening to the recordings of them, how many are reading the content that we put online and sharing it and liking it and all those sorts of bits. Because as an organisation, but as a team as well, we've really invested in that wellness and loneliness type aspects over the last particularly month or so whilst this has been going on. So increasingly important, but additional data points to help us track, which ultimately as the workplace gets more normal in months, years, whatever that looks like, we'll then probably keep forwards because it's something that we found actually is a really powerful data tool that we now have.
Yep, and Kirsty, I saw you shaking your head when Richard was speaking. So one of the questions I would like to kind of get you to weigh in on is, so if you're measuring how everybody's doing and how the tools and the experience is, and Richard, you mentioned doing it on an ongoing basis. I wonder how many organizations such as yours, Kirsty, are looking to continue this trend past in what ISG is calling the new future, not the new normal, but the new future. And how much of that do you think can be then measured back into productivity gains? So, happy employee equals happy work equals happy outcomes, kind of thought. Your thoughts on that, Kirsty?
Yeah, I mean, I was just listening, and sorry if I was shaking my head at you, Richard. I wasn't disagreeing. I was probably processing somewhat there. I mean, I think one of the things I was reflecting on is pre-COVID, and then I'll come to your point, kind of post-COVID or the new normal, is very much the link between happy employees and productivity. And initially, when I was thinking about joining the panel, we did some work pre-COVID around our onboarding process within Nationwide as part of the tech talent strategy, knowing that we were looking to bring in a significant level of new employees to the organisation. Albeit our turnover isn't high, but we wanted these new employees with specific talent to really stay with Nationwide and think about what a great experience coming into our organisation was and is. And actually, this onboarding experience should absolutely reflect the culture of the organisation. So people should feel that culture before they even join the organisation. And I think one of my reflections in terms of the data and analytics piece is to educate and encourage the rest of the organisation to think about employee experience. Using the data and analytics to drive that can be really powerful. And what I mean by that is, within kind of our people and culture community, we have lots of systems and data which we harvest and mine, but linking that with more broad organisational data has actually driven out changes within our risk and control environment in terms of onboarding, but also challenging some of our IT processes in terms of enabling new colleagues to access hardware, to access systems, to really be productive from day one. So to answer your question, I think we've almost proved that ahead of COVID. So just as an example, employee experience around onboarding went from 66 to 88% in the first 5 weeks. So we know that our new colleagues are more satisfied, but we also enabled about a 1.8 million increase in productivity gains because our colleagues also had equipment and access to software that they needed to do their job. So I think we've very much proven pre-COVID, happier employees, more productive, and I absolutely think that it is the way to go post-COVID as well. And I think the whole point of data analytics is to drive people processes into people experiences. So shifting from process to experience. And that's a whole mindset shift for, I think, organizations to go on.
Yep, and I agree. And one of the interesting portions is, we were just speaking with an organization yesterday, and they had a new employee, and they had never they hadn't stepped foot in the office since the interview, and on the onboarding process and everything to do with service request and getting help and everything to that nature. And so, Pete, is that something that you can help us understand as how that's happening in the new world?
Yeah, so the employee experience used to begin when you became an employee, and now that's really backed up. The employee experience starts with that first interaction in the interview process. Are you getting emails? Are you going to a portal? Are you having a video conference as part of your interview process, or is it just a phone call from somebody running through an airport on a mobile phone? All the way through the hiring and the offer, we're enabling companies to be able to send training materials out. I hate calling it training. You train a dog. Education materials out to new hires before they've officially started. There's some security and privacy things related around that, all the way through integrating HR systems with IT systems, so that experience of, we call it N-4. That's when you want the provisioning of devices and access to start, so that at N-1 you're all set up and you can test it out and the employee hits the ground and is productive on day one. And it's data behind all that. I mean, from the beginning of workplace technology, we had data, and primarily we used to use it as a reactive thing. Oh, we have a lot of problems in this area. Let's dig into that data, find the root cause, fix it once, and we won't have to deal with that anymore. And that now it's moved towards proactive. We're looking and seeing what's going on with users in near real time, and identifying issues both for individuals and populations of users, and addressing those issues. And really where we're going, Paul was touching on some of the telemetry, and we know how people are using these tools. And really, I mean, it's kind of scary how each one of your keystrokes within Microsoft is logged. But how can we use that really rich data to give you nudges, to give you help, to give you things that will make you more engaged and more productive, and not just give you a better experience, which will happen, but also help you drive your business forward and make life a little bit easier for you. So that's where we're headed with data.
Can I ask a question? Can I just ask Peter a question?
Yeah, sure, Paul.
Does this all roll up? I'm fascinated. Does this all roll up to one person in these organisations, maybe at Nationwide or Lloyds, or in your experience? So who owns that data? Which is, forgive me, Dee, for asking the question, but who owns it and who's responsible for, implementing the outcomes that data would hint at being required?
Yeah, I love that question. I'll give a quick answer and see what Richard and Kirsty and others say. So traditionally it was, initially it was sort of the technology providers. They had all this telemetry and didn't quite know what to do with it. And then you could say, the VP of infrastructure or the CIO who managed these systems kind of kept the data and maybe if they were forward thinking would try to do something with it. Now you're seeing people have realized, hey, we got to run this business with data. So you're getting HR with concerns about the employee experience and the onboarding process. You're getting business units realizing, wow, if we can work differently, we can be more productive and have stronger talent and be more competitive. So I think you're seeing it go from a technology data for use of technology to really expand and be data for use of the whole business. What do you all see?
Yeah, I'd echo what you just said there. So we've got the group data owner and the CIO division that sit within it, but fundamentally that knowledge is a really, really useful tool to help us identify everything from where our skills gaps are and what the skills gap in the market looks like, through to how we're reaching out to them through the funnel for them joining, and then once they're in the organization as well, how they're interacting with emails, how they're interacting with their work, how they're coming into the office, everything really. So it's got an owner and it's got a lot of training and security that sits around it, but fundamentally it's really useful information for line managers, business units, HR, capability and development team, as well as the data teams themselves.
Yeah, and just to add another time, I mean, completely agree with what Pete and Richard have spoken about here, but we're also seeing some examples of this data being made available for self-serve, if you will, so we're certainly making some of this data available to managers to assess and keep a track of how much one-on-one time they're spending with their team members. And Paul, you spoke about loneliness, and this is where I think Pete also touched upon how every now and then we've got to give a nudge to our people, saying that you need to spend a little more time speaking to those individuals in your team, because nothing counts for better experience than that one-on-one connect. So a lot of self-serve use cases around that data emerging as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Has anyone taken the opportunity to do analysis around the data surrounding potential upskilling during this period, where certain job functions are maybe not as critical as other job functions? We have a client that a small portion is being highly, 24/7, and other portions of the organizations, due to the environment, are basically shut down. And to me, that's an opportunity to say, hey, what's the skill set of those that are not as busy, and can you upskill them enough to alleviate some of the pain and pressure on the others that are 24/7? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Dee. We are in the kind of early stages of creating this idea of flex force. So just absolutely off the back of what you've just alluded to. So there are capabilities that are less required at the moment, and those that have really been amplified. And through our kind of learning portal and through developing new learning pathways, we are looking at reskilling. So taking this kind of flex force of people and reskilling them through this period. And again, something which we trialed, but more of a proof of concept during some of our early tech strategy work. So looking at reskilling people in coding, so people who had different careers in Nationwide that wanted to go into technology. We proved that on quite a small scale, and then we're in a position now where we can absolutely scale that across the society. So early days, but we are absolutely looking at that as a strategy.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that sits within our world as well, within the apprentice and development spaces. A lot of that is bringing people in from the wider group into the technology areas, and then an apprenticeship is a fantastic way of doing it. So it's a way of taking people that have the right mindset to learn and the people that show the right strengths in the way they operate, and teaching them the skill sets that they need to be able to operate in the division. And that was something that we've seen happening anyway over the last few years, is increasingly there's been that shift and that focus and that opportunity to retrain. And this has almost acted as an accelerator for it, because all of a sudden you've got teams of people who are probably the busiest they've ever been, making kind of really quick implementation changes dictated by the government, and you've got other teams whose work for completely valid reasons has either slowed right down or paused. So there's almost a direct, can person A help person B, but also can person A long-term train up in these development and skill sets, and moving towards, you don't need to be an expert from day one. As long as you've got the right mindset and the right attitude towards it, then we can really help and develop you through it. And we see apprentices right through to 50-year-olds that are doing it, where they've moved over from different environments into the technology sector, which is great to see.
I can maybe give two examples. One's internal to DXC. We have thousands of people who provide site support services. Well, guess what? When all the sites close, they need something else to do. During that time, we also saw a doubling on many accounts of the calls we were taking. So we were able to shift some of those people to a new role. That's an internal DXC thing. What we're doing for our customers is part of this is upskilling, is education, is getting into a new role. Part of it is also just getting the right technology in people's hands so they can do that new job. And we've been successful helping, whether it's through virtual applications and devices or service catalogs that allow them to choose the tools they need, getting people spun up much quicker so they can dive into that new role. It didn't make as big a difference in a pre-COVID world. Now you might be in a new job overnight, and we need to get you productive fast, and we've had a good story to tell there.
Dee, just one of,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Kirsty.
Well, I was just going to reference something which is probably less tech focused, but through the COVID crisis, we've reskilled our frontline employees to be able to do the job of the contact centres that we have. So basically rerouting calls into branches, and that has given us increased capacity of about 220 FTE. So, instead of increasing, we've managed to redirect. And actually, I think our branch staff are answering around about 84% response rate on calls, which is phenomenal. So it's alleviated the calls going into contact centres, but also from a member perspective, we've clearly been able to retrain and reskill and help our members through a really difficult time.
Excellent, excellent. So we have about 2 or 3 minutes left, and I want to leave on one thought and kind of get a real quick roundabout from everyone. Is in this new environment where data is plentiful and decisions are being made, how do you create a culture beyond the traditional people that look at analytics, et cetera, et cetera? How do you create a culture of decision making based upon data and facts, as opposed to maybe some of the more subjective environments? And so sort of a data-driven decision-making model. And Paul, I'll start with you.
I think a lot of it, I've seen this for many years, a lot of it is to do with the tools that you can put on it. Most of my experience, people are happy to take that responsibility by and large, and what they get frustrated by is a lack of ability to see, the overall, and to drill into the right level of detailing, to get granular at the right level, and then next time come up at a high level and look at identified trends. To me, I still see that people, lack the ability. Those with a genuine inquiring mind, lack the ability to be able to roam and analyze data at whatever level. Like I said, 1 minute's high, next minute's really granular. To me, it's provide them and feed the people with the inquiring mind with the information that they need. And that's still a work in progress. We've been trying to crack that for many, many years. So we're getting better at it, but it's still not where it needs to be from an accessibility point of view. I still don't feel.
Okay. Richard, any comments?
Yeah, I think increasingly for us, it's people actually want to see the data. So you're kind of in some ways pushing through a bit of an open door, because a lot of them are e-commerce or numbers backgrounds, as you might expect working for a bank. So they want to see the numbers and they like the numbers. So if you can show them the actual data that sits behind it and combine the stories to marry up to that data as well, then they're all ears and they want to be informed and they want to use that information to their advantage. So for us, it's, I guess, a good position to be in, where you're not having to battle it and you're kind of being supported through using it.
All right. And Kirsty, you get the last 10 seconds.
I think three things. I think curious mindset. So absolutely, absolutely enabling kind of curious mindsets within organisations, but encouraging people to join the dots, cross and beyond their perhaps accountabilities and boundaries. And then the third and final point is the data is just the data. And I think our ability to create really meaningful stories for our people and for our members around what the data is telling us is really where we can increase curiosity and increase value.
Perfect. I want to thank everyone for participating today and thank all the audience members. There are some questions in the chat log. We will try to get those answered as we go forward. Again, thank you everyone, both in the Eastern Hemisphere and in the Western Hemisphere, for a wonderful day. And again, thank you for joining and have a nice day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Cheers
much.
all.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.